Hello, all you reckoners out there, and welcome to Undeclared Bajor. This is Undeclared Bajor, the best Star Trek DS9 discussion podcast in the universe.
Sure.
My name is Fletcher. About to say hello is Data.
What up?
Today we're here to discuss Star Trek Deep Space Nine Season 6, Episode 21, The Reckoning. Alternate title, Coastbusters.
Coastemojin,
Coastemojin,
yeah. Yeah, okay. Took me a second. Also, you threw me off with Reckoners at the beginning because that's the name of a book series by Brandon Sanderson. So,
oh my goodness.
I was like, wait, what? No, well, right. This episode's The Reckoning. Got it.
Are there any, I wonder if there are any podcasts out there where I could listen to people discuss this book series.
We've not gotten anywhere near that book series yet, so maybe somewhere.
Okay. Well, we will be discussing spoilers up through this episode, but not after this episode, so it is safe to watch along with us if this is your first experience with Star Trek Deep Space Nine, unless we forget. But also, sometimes we spoil other stuff. Like, Donald Trump won the election again.
That is a thing that happened.
Yep.
If that's a spoiler for somebody at this point, then
right.
That's sad.
That just happened for us, so maybe like other developments have happened by the time you're listening to this. Who knows?
It turns out it was all a dream.
It was all a collective dream. How weird.
I know, yeah.
The Reckoning originally aired April 29th, 1998. It was written by David Weddle and Bradley Thompson. Story by Harry M. Worksman and Gabrielle Stanton. And directed by Jesus Salvador Trevino.
Yeah, we've seen him before, right?
Oh yeah, you don't forget a name like that.
I'm looking awesome at these other two.
Harry Worksman and Gabrielle Stanton.
Gabrielle G. Stanton is a writer who, along with Harry Worksman, wrote the story for the 6th season Deep Space Nine episode The Reckoning. Both she and Worksman have worked together many times. Stanton appeared in Free Enterprise, a movie featuring William Shatner, Chase Masterson, some other people. Worksman also appeared in the movie. I like that movie, actually. I have it on DVD somewhere. Worked on other popular shows such as Farscape, VIP, and Gene Roddenberry's Earth Final Conflict. She was also a writer-producer on the short-lived series The Invisible Man and Veritas The Quest. Now best known for her role as writer and producer on the popular series Grey's Anatomy and Ugly Betty.
Oh, wow. Those other ones were some pretty obscure things.
I mean, Farscape, even Earth Final Conflict isn't all that obscure. But yeah, Grey's Anatomy and Ugly Betty being the end of the article is really burying the lead.
Right. And he's back. Sirach Lofton is in this episode.
He made it. There's another main cast member not in this episode, though.
Is it O'Brien?
Yeah. Like, they have a senior staff meeting at the beginning, and I feel like that makes it extremely conspicuous that he's not there.
Huh.
And they don't mention him, like, what's the chief doing? Oh, he's off something or othering. But no, he's just gone.
Yeah, he slept in that morning or something. I don't know.
I mean, he's the only one with experience with the Pa Wraiths, too. I feel like I should point out here. So
yeah.
He's not the one to lose for this. True.
We should totally get, like, the Chief and Keiko here for some Pa Wraith consulting.
Yeah.
But, Captain Sisko briefs his staff on the latest with the Dominion War. The Dominion has solidified its hold in the Calandra sector. So, we're calling the Calandra sector for the Dominion. It's theirs now.
That's a shame.
Their next move is to try to get a supply line running through Betazoid space into the Argolis cluster. And we all know what that means. That's right. Game over for Vulcan.
The Argolis cluster has previously appeared in a couple of Next Generation episodes. Iborg and True Q.
Huh.
Let's see. In Iborg, the Enterprise is conducting a survey of the Argolis cluster star systems as a prelude to colonization, and they discover the crashed Borg scout ship. And then later, they're going to the Argolis cluster to deliver relief supplies to Tagra 4. So, yeah, there's it is apparently a cluster of 6 star systems.
So those guys on Tagra 4, they're probably not having a good time right now.
Yeah, it does seem like that's a definite possibility there. Also, I started looking up before we started the recording the episode. I was like, hey, I wonder, I'm going to look at some of these maps that I've used in the past of like Star Trek universe to see, like,
Sure.
where is the Calandra sector or the Argolis cluster or, all that sort of stuff. How close is Beta Z to like Vulcan really? And the map that I've used the most, in past recordings, I just discovered actually has 2 Argolis clusters for some reason. So that doesn't speak well of the accuracy on that one. Also, the Calandra sector is on here, and it appears to feature like the Trill system is in the middle of the Calandra sector. So I feel like, if the Dominion have taken that once again, we're kind of burying the lead on that.
Like Dax is over there, it's like, oh no, the Calandra sector. Oh well, I better not say anything.
The Calandra sector is like right next to, well, technically the Cardassian Union is there, and then the Zenkethi and the Talarians are between the Cardassians and the Federation. But it's like the Calandra sector is right next to the Zenkethi and the Talarians, and the Cardassians are real close there. So it would make sense from this map that is how that goes. But also, like, I see the Argolis cluster, I see Beta Z. It's like nowhere near Vulcan on this map. So I'm like, I don't see how like A plus B equals C here.
I mean, you just don't understand like how this stuff works.
It's true,
like,
yeah. I just don't.
I mean, there could be multiple Argolis clusters. Like there's, like a Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri, or something.
No, true. That is the thing.
I don't know. But before they can get into the Argolis cluster, they have to get past the Tibor Nebula. And that's where the 7th Fleet is going to try to stop the Dominion advance. The problem is the 7th Fleet is at half strength after the whole Cyberon thing. And we all know what happened at Cyberon. No need to rehash that disaster.
I mean, that's where like Optimus Prime joined in to help them, right?
Right. Yeah, like they got the Allspark and yeah.
It was an adventure. Everyone should read that novel.
Right. Elsewhere, the Romulans have kicked the Dominion out of the Benzite system. The bad news is the Romulans now hold the Benzite system. And Odo worries about if the Romulans will ever give it back. And Cisco is like, well, that's a problem for another time. But if I was the Benzite, I'd start brushing up on my Romulan.
I mean, Odo has a good point, and I like how everyone else is like, okay, like, that's depressing. Let's think about that later.
Right.
It's like, yes, the Soviets hold Berlin, but, like, let's beat the Nazis before we worry about that. Although, by the time the Soviets have Berlin, I guess the Nazis have been beaten. But
those fish people are just going to have to deal. Like, so anyway, that's where we are with the Dominion War. So we all clear. Everybody got all these details down. Good, because none of that is relevant to the rest of the episode.
Nope.
Just know that in the background of the episode, the 7th Fleet is getting wiped out and Jem'Hadar are raining down on Vulcan. But now it's time to start the real story. Cisco, Jake, and Kira are taking a trip down to Bajor to look at something the archaeologists found in Bahala. Remember that underground city?
Yeah, maybe I just, watch too much of that Everything Wrong With, but it's always like Star Trek is kind of rife with like the come take a look at this cliche where they call you like, you better come see this, as opposed to like telling them what's going on or what it is. Exactly. And this is just like, you better come all the way over to the planet to see this thing. We're not going to tell you about it beforehand. It really, like, we're in the middle of a war here, guys.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, the Argolis cluster is seriously about to fall. Do you really want me to come down there?
Chief O'Brien is mysteriously missing. There's lots of stuff happening.
Yeah, there's a big example of that later in the episode too. So yeah, the briefing ends. Everybody leaves but Kira and Odo, now in a relationship. Who we have to touch on that. So they do some lovey-dovey stuff that I could really do without seeing.
Yeah, neither of us was super invested in the Kira and Odo relationship when it started in that previous episode, and now it's just like, I still don't care, and it's getting kind of cringy.
Yeah, this is weird. Down on Bajor, a Bajoran monk, what's he called? Like a Ranjin?
Yes, Ranjin.
Leads Kira and the Siskos through a maze of underground tunnels. Jake is not having a great time. He complains that his dad is getting a little too into the whole emissary thing. I think he came here hoping for a good story, and now he's starting to have doubts that there's any kind of scoop down here.
Well, the thing is, like, he does talk about how he came here for a story, right? And I'm an important reporter guy. I got to get my scoop. But he complains like nonstop before they've even gotten close to where the story is supposed to be. So I'm just like, you're a bad reporter. Like he's not questioning like the monk about like, hey, what's the archaeological thing like down here? What's all this going on? He's just like, my dad's being the emissary, and I'm not going to get a decent story.
Right. Yeah, his journalism skills are not maybe super up to snuff, but the monk leads them to an old wall buried under the Temple of Bahala, explaining that it predates the city of Bahala by 10,000 years. It was part of an earlier settlement that was abandoned 25,000 years ago, and the city of Bahala was later built on top of it. The thing the monk wants to show them is an old stone tablet, over 30,000 years old. So that's over 5,000 years before this civilization collapsed or whatever.
Yeah. But who knows how long that civilization was there. Apparently, right. I guess if this was 10,000 years before Bahala, and that was 25,000 years away from now, that means Bahala was like 10,000 years old or something, I feel like. When it was like when we found it, so I mean, Bahala was maybe around for 5,000 years or something. That's pretty good run for a city.
Yeah, if these are like Earth years, like I'll remind you, like the pyramids were built like 5,000 years ago. Like,
yeah.
This is a long time. So this tablet is covered with ancient Bajoran writing, so old nobody can read it, but there are 2 words that they can make out. Welcome, emissary.
Bum, bum, bum.
That's Sisko. Sisko touches the tablet and goes into prophet vision mode. Prophets in Kira, Jake, and monk form walk in circles behind him, saying cryptic stuff like the circle is complete and it's time for the reckoning.
It's never a good thing when someone says it's time for the reckoning, I have to note.
Yeah.
According to the wiki, this is the first time the prophets are seen outside of the wormhole, and also represents their 5th appearance on the show.
Is that true?
I feel like they've appeared outside, like when you have orb experiences.
Yeah,
we sometimes see the prophets. Like I don't. This feels incorrect to me, but I don't know.
Yeah,
or maybe that's actually referenced to later in the episode when a literal prophet shows up on Deep Space Nine.
Oh sure, yeah, that could be it. But Sisko comes out of this vision and flies back into the cave wall. Everyone gathers around to check on him, but it's no use. Captain Sisko is dead. Oh no, wait, he's perfectly fine. They just needed something exciting to happen before they did the opening credits.
Yeah, it's all good.
He tells the others what he saw and asks the monk if he knows anything about the reckoning, but he knows nothing. It's like, well, I mean, there is the reckoning that's supposed to happen before the Bajoran Golden Age, but other than that, I don't know.
This guy's not an expert on that part of prophecies or whatever. You can't know them all, man.
True. Sisko decides they have to find out what the inscriptions on the tablet say. The monk says they're trying to translate them, but they don't have the resources. And Sisko says, well, luckily, we do. Oh, great, says the monk. I'll give you the pictures we took. Hey, where are you going with that? As Sisko walks off with the whole tablet.
I feel like this really should have been brought up later when Kaiwin's like, well, why didn't you let us translate the tablet? And he should have been like, well, I was going to, except that the guy in charge of that was like, we don't have any resources to do that with. And so I thought that this was being helpful. And she's like, no, we have much better resources on Bajor. They're the best, really. You wouldn't believe how great our resources are.
Right. I mean, I'm willing to believe that all the top Bajoran ancient language experts probably live on Bajor, but...
Well, it's true, but if those guys were so interested in translating this tablet, then why weren't they part of the resources this monk had at his disposal?
I don't know. Did he think to call them, or I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, up on Deep Space Nine, it turns out Cisco's resources are just Dax.
And she's not happy about this assignment either. She's really pissy for some reason.
She sassily hints to Cisco that this is really beyond her training as a science officer. But Cisco gives Dax the monk's translation program and just leaves her to it.
Look, I have to say here, like, you would not see Spock or Data as science officers, like, complaining about the science the captain wants them to do. Like, Jadzia is just here like, man, I have to do my job. Ugh. I was not impressed.
I don't know. I mean, is linguistics really a science that a science officer would do? I'm sure, like, it's a science
unless
to
you have
people who do it. But.
Unless you have a linguistics person, I feel like Data was always having to like help translate weird crap.
I think this is more of a job for, Data would totally be up for this job. But
yeah.
So Cisco heads down to the temple and is about to join the service when Worf calls and says Kai Wynn has suddenly showed up to the station. Cisco is clearly not happy about this, but then he catches one of the temple priests looking at it and plays it off.
Yeah, he's like giving him like the stink eye.
He's like, why is the emissary so mad to see the Kai? Shouldn't they be friends?
I mean, it's noted in here that in previous episodes, we'd kind of moved into Wynn was more willing to work with Cisco and kind of recognizing him as the emissary. I feel like the last time we saw her, she was like, I had my doubts, but like clearly you really are the emissary.
Right.
And then the note says, this episode undoes the recent modifications in the character of Wynn Adami. While it seemed as if her role as a villain was being rendered more ambiguous, in much the way the writers did to Dukat through the 3rd and 4th seasons, and her relationship with Cisco was improving, this episode relocates her to more familiar role of antagonist, a role she's occupied since her introduction. However, some fans pointed out her sudden return to an antagonistic stance as regards Cisco is somewhat unexplained. There's never really any reason given for why she suddenly feels so much antipathy towards him.
I don't know. I feel like it's still pretty ambiguous in this episode.
Well, I feel like she had a pretty clear-cut reason for being upset with him.
Well, yeah. I mean, that part of it for sure. But, so yeah, the Cisco goes to greet the Kai and basically says, to what do I owe the pleasure? And she's like, were you on Bajor yesterday stealing a priceless 30,000-year-old tablet? And Cisco was like, yeah, so?
Stealing is such a harsh word.
The Kai is like, well, we're a little bit sensitive to people just coming down and taking our ancient cultural stuff, especially after the Cardassian occupation. And Cisco says, but I wanted to see what the inscriptions say. And she's like, okay, but you can take pictures, right? I mean, you see what I'm saying here? And then Cisco counters, well, I think the prophets wanted me to take it. And she's like, oh, well, if the prophets told you they wanted you to take it, that's another matter entirely. And he's like, well, they didn't really say that. I just kind of figured that's what they wanted. And Kai Wynn is like, uh-huh.
Well, I mean, to be fair, he touched it and they appeared and talked to him, which seems to indicate, like, the prophets have some interest in me and this artifact, because no one else, like, gets tossed across the room and talks to the prophets when they touch it. So...
True. Well, maybe nobody else touched it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, yeah, she's like, well, you're the emissary, so I guess I can't really argue with you, but... And then later, Cisco whines to Dax that the Kai lodged a protest with Starfleet. Just because I removed a priceless artifact from an archaeological site without permission. I mean, what a Karen, am I right?
Honestly, I spent half of the episode wondering what... Like, okay, when weird Bajoran guy from the past shows up and is declared the emissary, The Bajorans are perfectly happy to change their entire culture when he goes, hey, as the emissary, I think we should do this. So Sisko could easily do an end run around the Kai and be like, hey, people of Bajor, I think it's really important. I, as the emissary, feel it's really important for me to examine this artifact. I think that's what the prophets want.
True.
All of Bajor would probably be like, yes, shut up, Kai. We think that this should happen.
I don't know. On the other hand, they could be a little wary after the whole caste system incident.
You would hope that they would be a little more wary about that stuff, but I have my doubts. Because it's not like they overthrew the caste system idea simply because they decided it was wrong. It was like, oh, it turns out that guy wasn't the emissary after all, so never mind.
Right. But yeah, Sisko's mad that the Admiral even took her side and told him to give it back. And Dax reminds Sisko that Starfleet isn't comfortable with the whole emissary thing and remarks how far Sisko has come, calling the prophets when he used to call them the wormhole aliens. Well, Sisko says whoever they are, they have a relationship with the Bajorans that goes back over 1,000 years. How much more than 1,000 years? 29,000 years.
Yeah, it seems like at least that many more.
Was that Futurama joke? It's like, it's worth over $50,000. It's like, how much more? 100,000. Dax also points out that it was Sisko who had to talk the prophets into protecting Bajor from the Jem'Hadar. And they said they were going to exact some kind of penance for it. Or did they say that he would just never find rest on Bajor? Anyway, something.
I think maybe both of those things. I don't remember.
Yeah. Sisko says that he believes the prophets want him to do something in return for the helpful mass murder they did. And he's not going to give the tablet back until he figures it out.
Well, we don't know that it was murder, and according to the expanded universe, it wasn't. They just transported them to a different time.
True, yeah. They went to go fight the conspiracy aliens, right? So
something about that. Also, this episode, we get a moment where Worf indicates that they're the only thing stopping the Dominion from sending more troops through. So that indicates that either there's some sort of continuing prophet intervention that stops the Dominion from sending another fleet, or maybe the Dominion is just like, we're not going to try that again.
Yeah, have they tried? We don't know.
From what Worf said, it doesn't sound like if they did try, they were successful. So that's good, I guess.
Worf could just be saying, we don't know what would happen, but if something did happen, it would be the only thing protecting us. So, yeah, but as he says this, the computer starts beeping. It has translated part of the inscription. The time of reckoning is at hand. The prophets will weep. Their sorrow will consume the gateway to the temple. Dax says, isn't the gateway to the temple Deep Space Nine? To which I say, is it?
Yeah, I was like, has this been established before? I don't remember that.
When I hear gateway to the temple, I think wormhole.
Yeah, wormhole door or whatever. But
yeah. And what does it mean that their sorrow will consume it? Just will people be sad? Or...
Well, to counteract that, Quark is instituting all-day happy hours. So
right.
That'll balance out the sadness of the prophets.
Exactly. Happy hour, yeah, that'll easily kill the sadness. But yeah, later Odo, Worf, and Bashir discuss the prophecy around that weird upstairs table outside of Quark's, which I really don't like. It's one of my least favorite locations. Bashir waves it off as yet another one of the Bajorans' vague, contradictory prophecies.
Those never come true.
Yeah. Odo counters that this one is anything but vague, which I strongly disagree with.
Yeah.
And that the prophecies have an odd way of coming true once you use hindsight to make the symbolism work out.
Yes.
But they are totally useless for predicting things. That's when Quark comes up to deliver drinks and say that he's extending happy hour to every hour in an effort to improve morale.
It can be both things.
Yeah. It'll improve his morale for sure if business increases. Bashir holds firm to his belief that this is a bunch of nonsense and nothing's going to happen. Someday we're all going to look back at this and laugh. And we are, but maybe not for the reasons Bashir imagines. But just then, there's a mysterious rumbling.
Oh, hold on. They do the quote here, the eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, Quark and Bashir say. Yeah. And there's a note in here that I was not aware of this. It says that this is a common conflation of two quotations from the Bible. The first, eat, drink, and be merry, which is from Ecclesiastes 8:15, and then eat and drink, for tomorrow we die, is from both Isaiah 22:13 and 1 Corinthians 15:32. So I didn't know that was a conflation of multiple passages.
Wow. So wasn't it Bashir who said that? So he's
Quark, or somebody says the first part and then somebody says the second part. Like it's two. I
think Bashir said the second part. So
yeah,
he needs to read his Bible. He got that all wrong.
So I guess, technically, Quark says, I just pulled it up. Quark says, eat, drink, and be merry, and then Bashir puts that in. So Quark's quotation from the Bible, which I'm sure the Ferengi are intimately familiar with that text from ancient human society. Right. He quotes it correctly, and then Bashir adds on the incorrect, conflation.
Yeah, everybody in Deep Space Nine is really good at quoting the Bible, weirdly. Maybe just there's a bunch of Bibles laying around, or I don't know. The state education superintendent of Oklahoma is also the superintendent of Deep Space Nine or something. I don't know. So, but then there's a mysterious rumbling. Everybody gathers around the promenade window, even though there's nothing to see out there yet. But luckily, all are looking right out the window to see the wormhole open and close. And then Bashir just suddenly is a believer.
Maybe it's just this is the normal rumble of something weird's going on with the wormhole, so they all know where to look.
Oh, yeah. This feels like wormhole bullshit. Let's go look. Odo has dinner with Kira and watches her eat. And what's she eating?
Yep.
A plate full of fruit.
Plate of fruit. Keep that in mind for later.
Yeah, think about that. She's worried about the prophecy, and Odo says maybe the prophets should be a little bit more clear about what they want people to do. And then Kira says that the Kai would say Odo lacks faith. And that's because the Kai's livelihood is entirely derived from the perpetuation of the myth that faith is a virtue and that critical thinking is a severe character flaw. But Kira says she doesn't know how people make it through the day without faith. And Odo says, we manage. Besides, he has faith in some things, such as you, Kira, so,
No.
She says she'll try not to disappoint. This is pretty classic, pretty standard line. Then the Kai visits Sisko's office to discuss some natural disasters that have been happening around Bajor. So we got flooding in the Rakantha province, an earthquake in the Kendra Valley, and a tornado in Tamulna. Now, are you 100% sure that the prophets want you to be holding onto that tablet? Because they don't seem super happy. And then the Kai hands Sisko a letter from First Minister Shakar asking him to return the tablet, and Sisko is amazed. Shakar never agrees with Wynn on anything. He says Wynn must be very persuasive.
See,
and she's like, "Are you for real? Do you still not understand what this complaint is? Do I need to go down to Earth and steal King Tut's mummy or something to illustrate this for you? I mean, I know I'm Kai Wynn and I have a certain reputation, but I feel like I'm being pretty reasonable this time."
I feel like if after Kai Wynn's first foray into convincing him, if he maybe called Shakar, a guy that he knows casually at least, and talked this through with him, as opposed to just continuing to ignore the Bajoran people in general and their opinion of what he'd done, just open a dialogue with someone other than Kai Wynn, and maybe Shakar be like, "Oh yeah, okay, go ahead and keep that. I understand that the prophets want you to," but it doesn't seem like any Bajorans are hearing anything except for what Kai Wynn has to say about it, which, that's going to color things.
I mean, it really seems like Sisko just grabbed the tablet and ran off with it and did not discuss this with anybody.
Yeah.
But, Sisko pouts and he's like, "Okay, fine, I'll send the tablet back." And then he goes down to Dax and tells her he needs her to finish the translation before he sends the tablet back. And she's like, I have pictures. She goes over some of the stuff she's translated so far. First of all, the Bajorans will either suffer greatly or eat fruit. So,
which Kira just did. So prophecy, true.
Prophecy fulfilled. Also, once the reckoning begins, the emissary will do something. But that part is, like, damaged. And, so, and she says that if the prophets contact him again, can he please ask for a dictionary? He's like,
I mean, she's doing a pretty good job of reading this thing, you know?
If what she's reading is really, like, accurate.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you ever read about, well, there's lots of stuff, but pretty much anytime there's something to decipher, people put forward all kinds of, like, wrong translations. Like, you know, that happened with Linear B, you know, it happened with, like, the Zodiac ciphers. People, like, you know, they kind of decide what they want it to say, and then they make what's there fit in with, you know, what they want it to say. So Sisko goes back to Ops, where Kira reports that Martok has sent 3 attack cruisers to bolster the defense perimeter around the Durala system. And I don't think I need to explain what the whole significance of that is.
Nope.
So we'll just, you know, move on. Sisko rubs his eyes, tired. He says the Kai is the spiritual leader of millions of Bajorans, but she's not an easy woman to like. I mean, she came up here to peacefully resolve a diplomatic incident that I caused. Can you believe that woman? Maybe I should have consulted her before borrowing the tablet. And then Kira says, she just would have tried to stop you, and rightfully so. But Kira has been working on her empathy skills. She says she almost feels sorry for Wynn, spending her whole life in pious service to the prophets, working hard towards becoming Kai, plotting assassinations against anybody who stands in her way.
Plotting to overthrow governments and...
Right. Yeah.
All that good stuff.
Orchestrating coups. And then along comes the emissary and steals all her thunder. So you just got to feel for her.
Yep.
And Kira figures the Kai is probably jealous of the captain's relationship with the prophets. As is Kira, a little bit.
Yeah, she's like, I mean, I wish my gods talked to me all the time.
Right.
How nice would that be?
Later, Kira finds the Kai at the promenade window, watching the wormhole open and close, and they do a little bit of verbal sparring. But Wynn assures Kira that despite their differences, she and Sisko both serve the prophets, and there's no higher calling. And then Kira gets a reaction on her face to that, which I guess is supposed to inform the decisions she makes later in the episode. Then Jake goes to the captain's quarters to pay his dad a visit. He confides that this emissary stuff scares him. Twice he's been called down to the infirmary when Ben was having prophet vision episodes, and he doesn't want that to happen anymore.
Yeah, those damn prophets. He's not a big fan.
Yeah. But Ben says that for better or for worse, he's the emissary, but also he's Jake's dad. And I can think of no reason those two things would ever come into conflict.
No, it's all good.
That night, Sisko tosses and turns in bed. He goes down to the science lab to yell at the prophets for being so mysterious. Then he impulsively grabs the tablet and smashes it against the wall. It breaks into a zillion pieces, and then some blue glowing wisps and some orange glowing wisps fly up out of it.
Nothing could possibly be bad about glowy, wispy things flying away.
It's like, none of this is probably good.
The note on this scene is Bernard Jansen, a German monk who was writing a dissertation about religious symbolism in Star Trek, compared Sisko's smashing of the tablet in this episode to Moses smashing the 10 Commandments in the Book of Exodus.
Those are two stories where some stone tablets got smashed.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah. This religious scholar has really dug deep into the parallels, it sounds like. But later Sisko explains to Odo and Dax that he just suddenly had the urge to smash the tablet. Dax and Odo can't find any residual energy to explain what he saw. He insists that he saw it, and Odo says, "We believe you, Captain." And then Sisko says, "Don't patronize me, Constable." And Odo's like, "Okay, we don't believe you. What do you want?"
Yeah, like, what do you want from me here?
Then there's some shaking and some rumbling, and Worf reports that the station is experiencing a power drain. And then Odo's like, "Hey, see, maybe that's related to that glowing smoke you saw or whatever." Then Sisko picks up a piece of the tablet and declares, "I've done what I need to do. The prophets wanted me to destroy that tablet." And then Dax says, "Try explaining that to Kai Wynn. And also, I, Fletcher, am kind of skeptical, but whatever.
No, clearly they did want this. I mean, that's probably what the tablet said. It's like, when the reckoning comes, the emissary will smash this thing you are reading.
Yeah, it's like, welcome, emissary, please smash to begin reckoning.
Yeah.
But yeah. Cut to Kai Wynn going, are you effing kidding me? You did what?
Which, yeah, fair.
It's just that the prophets wanted me to. I don't know what to tell you. As if he's being perfectly reasonable. And then Wynn is like, okay, but also 2/3 of the wheat harvest in Rakantha has been destroyed, and the earthquakes in Kindra have left hundreds homeless. But before Sisko can say, only hundreds? That's not so bad. There's more rumbling, and Odo calls Sisko down to the promenade, but again, won't say why. He's just like, I urgently need you in the promenade. He's like, what's up? He's like, please just come look for yourself.
I know you're in a super important meeting, but this is more super important.
Right. So Sisko and Wynn go down to the promenade and see Kira standing in the temple doorway with sparks coming out of her hands and her eyes have turned blue.
You know what? Now that I think about it, maybe Sisko just had a thing set up with Odo. Like, he knew this Kai Wynn meeting was not going to go well, and so he's like, hey, after like 5 minutes, call me and tell me like there's something super important happening.
And then when he was on his way down there, this thing actually did happen.
Yeah, it's just coincidentally, yeah.
Or maybe he already saw it was happening, and then he's like, okay, I'm going to go meet with Wynn and tell her about the tablet thing, and then call me and like tell me about this.
Well, it did seem strange to me that Odo's like, as he gets there, he's like, I think we found the source of the power drain. And I was like, she's standing in the middle of the promenade. You cannot tell me that it took from that earlier scene in the lab when the power started getting drained till now for someone to notice this.
But yeah, so this weird possessed Kira goes up to Sisko and says, you are the Sisko. It is time for the reckoning. And Sisko quickly figures that this is a prophet. And also the prophet claims that Kira is letting herself be possessed willingly.
I mean, I buy it.
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, as Odo points out, this is in character for Kira, so.
Yeah.
Sisko asks what the reckoning is, and Kira Prophet says, it is the end, or the beginning. She awaits Kostamojin. The battle will be joined, and then Kai Wynn explains that Kostamojin is the evil one, a paw wraith, that was banished from the Celestial Temple. Kira Prophet says Bajor will be reborn, and then Kai Wynn immediately recognizes this as Shabran's 5th prophecy. If the evil one is destroyed, it will bring 1,000 years of peace, the golden age of Bajor. And everybody's like, wait, if? And then Sisko says, well, what do you want me to do? And the prophet says, the Sisko has done his part. So Sisko was like,
yeah, you're good.
Really? I was just bullshitting when I said the prophets wanted me to smash that tablet. But okay, I guess that worked out.
And I love Wynn's like, oh man, I've been arguing against this whole time with like all these reasonable things. But now I see that he was right and you guys wanted him to do this. So, all right.
Even though I had every reason to doubt him, I guess I was wrong after all.
Yep. And then Wynn is like, hey, let me help. And the prophet completely ignores her 100%. And I was like, ouch, that's gotta hurt.
She's like, hey, it's me, the Kai. And it's like, well, what can I do? And the prophet just stares off into the air. And then Sisko goes up to Ops and says, okay, I guess let's evacuate the station before this epic battle starts.
It's too bad that Chief O'Brien isn't here to help with all of the crazy stuff going on.
Right.
Also, did you notice, like, when they get down there and Kira Prophet starts walking towards them, like, glasses on the bar start exploding, and I'm just like, but why? Like electric arcs are going through, like, the lights and stuff, but why does that make glasses start blowing up?
Yeah, I don't know. And like, I think Morden was there. Just he's like, oh, this is never a dull moment on this space station.
I'm sure glad that I drink at this bar.
Yep. And then Dax says, well, how about we just flood the station with chronotons and force the prophet off the station? But Sisko says, no, we should let this battle play out.
I mean, a golden age does sound pretty good. I don't know how that interacts with the Dominion War. If they get 1,000 years of peace, does that mean that like the Dominion just can't touch them?
Who knows? But Worf points out that Deep Space Nine is crucial to the defense of the Alpha Quadrant. But Sisko's like, well, remember when the prophets erased those thousands of Jem'Hadar ships from existence? I think they're the ones I'm going to be concerned about right now. And Bashir says, what if the prophets lose? Are you willing to sacrifice Kira? And Sisko says that, well, the prophet said Kira was doing this willingly, and then Odo steps in and backs that up. He's like, yeah, that sounds like something Kira would do. We were just having a whole conversation about faith.
Well, and I'm kind of surprised, like, Worf is the one who is like, what, you really believe Kira would do that? I'm like, we've had conversations before, and Worf is, like, always on the side of, like, believing in the spiritual and having faith and stuff.
But yeah, so they get to work evacuating the station, a procedure I'm sure everybody is quite familiar with by now.
Yep.
Worf tells Odo he should have backed him up arguing against all this, but Odo says he had to respect Kira's wishes, or his best guess at what Kira's wishes may well have been.
May well have been, yeah.
And Worf says he doesn't know if he could do the same if it was Dax. And then Odo says the prophets will be victorious if Kira has anything to say about it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, of all the Bajorans we know on the station, if you want a good fighter on your side, I mean, who's it going to be, really?
True. But soon the evacuation is almost complete, but there's a group of Bajorans on the promenade refusing to leave, led by Kai Wynn.
Because Kai Wynn can never just, like, go with stuff. She's always got to be, like, pushing against what's going on.
Yep. Yeah. Wynn explains that they're praying for the prophets to be victorious, and Sisko's like, praying to who? The super prophets? I don't think the prophets need your advice to try to win the battle.
Hey, win. Don't lose.
Right.
Try to win. And the prophet's like, yeah, got it.
Yeah, okay, that's okay. Now that you say that. Yeah, but Kai Wynn is like, okay, good point, but why are you staying? And he's like, well, because of my other job as commander of the station. And then the guy starts getting really excited about the Golden Age. And she's like, soon the prophets and the people will be as one. And then it's like, wait, what?
Yeah, what does that mean? That's the scariest thing I've heard yet.
You didn't say what? That does sound a little terrifying. But before she can explain, Kira Prophet announces that Kostomogen has chosen the form of the Destructor.
So it took a while. I wonder if like Kostomogen also requires someone willing, or I expected some line about, like, because we established earlier Jake was not a fan of the prophets, so I expected some line. It's like, I needed to find someone who really hated the prophets in order to, you know, like, get the same energy jiving, and this was the guy, because it's hard to find someone who really hates the prophets on a Bajoran station. But no, there's really not much explanation for how Jake ends up being chosen.
Yeah, no, it's not explained. It's Jake. Bet you didn't see that coming. Now Jake has red eyes, indicating evil.
As opposed to the previous time that we saw a Pa-Wraith when it possessed Keiko and there was no, like, red eyes or freaky voice or any of that stuff.
Yeah, that Pa-Wraith was, like, better at hiding its identity or something. I don't know.
The funny thing is, back in that episode, The Assignment, where Keiko gets possessed, Jake mentions he always wanted to see a Pa-Wraith. Well, here we go.
Man. Oh, maybe he invited the Pa-Wraith into his heart accidentally or something like that by saying that.
Maybe he was just like, oh, what a scoop.
Yeah. It's like, Jake Sisko, I will give you a great story. Oh, yes, take me. Yeah, Sisko's like, oh no, not my son, take me instead. And Jake Imogen throws him back with a force push and says, let it begin. And he's like, 1, 2, 3, 4, I declare a thumb war.
So,
basically.
Okay, this is where I get into the original idea for the episode.
Oh, okay.
And for this scene. We'll do those one at a time. So, initially, Thompson and Weddle thought that this should be like a horror movie. And they told Irish Stephen Bear, they're like, okay, look, here's how we want to do it. And apparently Irish Stephen Bear, the quote in here, it says he loved it and told them it's Godzilla versus Mothra with a mummy movie opening. So they took this to heart and wrote the opening sequence as like a Vedic discovering a casket hidden in a chamber in the walls of Bahala. And when he opens it, like 2 entities escape and the Vedic has a heart attack and dies and the entities disappear into the ceiling. And then the camera pans upward to reveal a large bird sitting on the wall looking at the dead body. This opening was scrapped because it was felt to be too schlock horror, and Thompson explains it was too mummy movie-like. Although I wouldn't have minded that.
So this is the de-schlocked version of this story?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And then we get to this section of the episode. So in the first few drafts of the script, apparently it was Kira possessed by a prophet and then Wynn possessed by a paw wraith. Which, man, that would have looked bad for her after this ended. It's like, wait, the Kai was like working against the prophets and possessed by the evil ones? But so the battle was like super elaborate, and Weddle and Thompson wrote them as like having a running battle all over the station, throwing fireballs and like completely trashing the promenade. And it turned out that it was just like logistically ridiculously difficult. And so Ira Stephen Bear had Renee Echevarria come in and like rewrite and simplify the script without losing the essence of the plot. And it says, when Stephen Oster first saw the Thompson-Weddle draft, he responded by proclaiming that to shoot this would be a 15-day shoot as opposed to the normal 6 days on an episode of Deep Space Nine. So that pretty much wasn't going to happen. And so the director for this battle, he's like, I see it as like a battle of wills, not like an action thing. And so they rewrote the script accordingly. However, while Trevino's solution might have made for some excellent television for viewers seeing the completed episode with all the post-production effects added, during the shoot itself, it all looked rather silly. As Dennis McCarthy, who scores the episode with the raw footage, testified, they were just standing there looking weird, like they were at the dentist's office thinking about their upcoming root canals.
Nice.
Indeed, during the shooting of this super serious battle, both Nana Visitor and Sirach Lofton had great difficulty keeping a straight face to get complete takes.
Nice.
So yeah, just imagine while we're watching the scene where orange energy and blue energy are meeting, like without any of those effects, it's just Jake and Kira staring at each other and then like occasionally breaking into giggles.
Just like with like standing in these like stances, being like, "Ugh." But yeah, so yeah, what really happens is that blue swirlies surround Kira and orange swirlies surround Jake, and then blue and orange bursts of ghost energy or something erupt from their chests and collide in the middle. And we've seen this enough times that the rules are clear. Whoever gets their beam of swirly chest energy over to the other guy's side wins.
Yeah, I mean, it's just how it works. It doesn't matter if it's Harry Potter or Star Trek or whatever. When the two beams of different colors meet, it's whoever gets to the other side that wins.
Right. It's so obvious that nobody even had to say a line to explain it to us.
Yeah.
So Kai Wynn looks at this and is like, okay, you know what? You're right. We should probably leave.
Yeah, at this point, she's finally like, oh, yeah, maybe I should have gotten on one of those shuttles already.
Yeah.
To her credit, she's like, emissary, come on, we gotta go. Like, she's not gonna go by herself. She wants him to come too.
Yeah. Dax comes down and says, we can do the chronotons, because it seems to me like even if the prophets win, it's not going to go too good for Jake. But Ben has faith that Jake will be fine. But he wants to stay and be here for his son. And he yells at both of them to leave. And Wynn is like, okay, you don't have to tell me twice. And then Dax and Wynn walk together to the airlock. But Dax gets distracted by some lost kids or something. And she tells Wynn to go to the airlock down the hall to the right. But Wynn goes down the hall to the left.
And the Starfleet officer who's standing at the end of the hall, ushering people down the correct way, pays no attention whatsoever to the Kai of Bajor going the other way.
Right. It's like, no, oh, ma'am, no. Back on the promenade, the chest beam battle rages. Based on how much more blue beam there is than orange, the Prophet seems to be winning pretty handily.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes in these situations, like, there's a last-minute turnaround and the other side wins, but also, like, Jake's face is getting all weird lines and stuff, so and he doesn't look like he thinks he's going to win.
Yeah, he's definitely looking in a bad spot. He's got cracks in his face and stuff.
Yeah.
But suddenly something happens. Jake and Kira look around, and Kira yells, "No!" Up in ops, Kai Wynn has turned on the chronotons and says, "May the prophets forgive me." And it's a good thing I took that How to Turn On Chronotons extension course in seminary.
Yep. I mean, maybe Worf just had it dialed up and ready to go, and so she got up here and it was like, 4 chronotons, push 1. So and she did that.
It's like, start chronotons. She's like, well, that's a freebie.
So another idea from that original Thompson-Weddle script is that it's actually Sisko that stops the battle by flooding the promenade with chronoton radiation, choosing to protect the station and the people rather than respect the wishes of the gods. However, after taking over the script, Echevarria was like, no, this just doesn't work. And then it hit me. This is exactly the opposite of what we should do. It's not Sisko that should put a stop to it. It's Sisko that should be the last man of faith. And in this, if that was the case, then the combatants were wrong. Jake should be one of them. And I guess that's how we end up changing from Win to Sisko being, or to Jake. And it's like, Sisko would then be like Abraham, being asked to sacrifice his own son. So it's like, we're really drawing on the Bible heavy in this episode.
Sure. But yeah, blue and orange poofs of smoke fly out of Kira and Jake, and they collapse on the ground. Ben rushes to Jake. In a captain's log, Sisko explains that everyone has come back to the station and that repairs are underway. Repairs for what? I don't know.
I mean, there was a lot of energy, like, bursts coming off of that fight, so...
Okay, yeah, maybe some circuits got blown or so, I don't know. And Jake is in the infirmary, however, Bashir assures us he'll be fine. Sisko goes to Jake's side and is like, okay, hey, look, I know it seemed like I was about to sacrifice you back there, but then Jake is like, oh no, it's cool. I could sense how evil that Pa Wraith was. I was totally willing to die to defeat it. And then Sisko's like, oh, so I'm off the hook? Wow, nice. And then Kira thanks Odo for standing up for her beliefs, then goes to escort the Kai back to her shuttle. Kai Wynn seems pretty pleased with herself for saving the station and Jake, and as an added bonus, all the floods and earthquakes and stuff have stopped.
Which was clearly all her doing. And because Sisko never bothers communicating with Bajor at all, she will take complete credit for that, and people will believe it because they won't hear anything to the contrary.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But Kira is like, yeah, but I can't help but notice that we're not in a golden age where the people and the prophets are living as one, whatever that means. And then she accuses Wynn of being jealous that Sisko had stronger faith than her, and as a result, the reckoning was stopped and the evil is still out there. So either we're going to have to do another reckoning or figure something else out. And then Wynn turns and leaves, thinking to herself, yeah, this is by far the worst trip to Deep Space Nine yet. Why do I even bother coming here? The end.
I mean, yeah, it never goes all that well for her, let's be honest. She always comes up here with these demands and, like, never ends up getting what she wants.
She's like, yeah, why do I keep doing this? I'm just
I guess
begging
there was
for
that one time when she came here to, like, negotiate that treaty with the Cardassians, and she managed to not only do that, but kill Barial in the process, so she came out pretty well that time.
I guess that was a twofer.
Yeah. The note here, there's a note about, like, that shot where, like, Jake collapses and Sisko goes and, like, lifts him up. It says, this shot was done by a camera on the 25th of February, 1998. Multiple takes needed to be filmed as Sierra Lofton kept breaking into laughter.
Okay.
Yep. So there's, and then there's just a couple notes in here about like the original concept for the show, where Ira Stephen Bear says the show came about because the writers were like, hey, on the assignment episode, like we tapped into like an interesting possibility with the Pa Wraiths, and then we kind of just like chucked it, like as if it's all done now. But we felt like maybe there was more juice that we could get out of them, is what he says. But we were juggling a lot of balls in the air, and sometimes balls don't drop for a long time. Yeah, thanks, Irish Stephen Bear.
Well put.
Well put. And so Bradley Thompson and David Weddle come in, and they're like, hey, we got this idea for a show. Like the ultimate battle between good and evil. We put a prophet and a Pa Wraith up there, and we just deal with some deep stuff. And the producers are like, that's interesting. A very similar story was recently pitched by writing team Harry Worksman and Gabrielle G. Stanton. So, like, we want to do this idea. What we'll do is we'll pay them for their idea, and then you two guys can write the script based on your like other version of this idea. So everybody got some money out of it, I guess.
Sure. I do like the concept of it being more of a horror-oriented thing, though, because, you know, the whole Pa Wraith possession thing.
Yeah, I mean, they could have made this a little darker and creepier for sure. I would have been okay with it.
All right, so how would you review The Reckoning?
So I do not have all of the same. I feel like we've got a pretty solid nitpick of the week from Fletcher on like how Cisco took the thing in the first place. Like I don't feel that strongly as strongly as you do about that. I'm like, you know what? He's the emissary. The prophets talked to him when he touched this thing. I think he's justified in being like, you know what? I'm going to take this and we're going to figure this out. And even to not just take pictures, because clearly there's something magical about the artifact itself. And it turns out, to do his part of it, he could not have done that with just pictures. He had to smash the thing. So his, like, instinct that the prophets, this is what they wanted, was dead on. And if Wynn would just get over this thing where she's constantly questioning him when he's like, the prophets want this, the prophets speak to me, and she's like, oh, well, they don't talk to me, and I'm kind of a bitter person about that, so I'm going to assume that you don't know what you're talking about. Like, if she could get over that, then like they would have a much better relationship, and she would have been like, oh, okay, the prophets wanted this, all right, well, how can I help? And it would have been a whole different thing. So anyway, that I get the sense that you're strongly bothered by that. It's not really a thing for me.
Okay.
So just get that out of the way.
I mean, I'm not bothered by it. I'm just kind of amused by it that like nobody ever even seems to address that the Kai might have a little bit of a point. But
I mean, Dax kind of does, I guess. But I think that's just because Dax doesn't want to do work.
Right.
Like, we very rarely see Dax doing much science stuff, and now I think we know why, because she avoids working so that she can party and take honeymoons and things. Anyway, there's some fun stuff about this episode. I agree with their idea that, like, they came up with something interesting with the paw wraiths, that we've had these wormhole aliens that are benevolent-ish, and then having something of, like, similar power, but that is malevolent to go up against them. Like, that's got some depth to be plumbed. I don't know that jumping directly to the final battle was ramping up in the way that I would have if I was doing the writing, but whatever. I feel like we've come. They're showing how far Cisco has come in his like faith in the prophets at this point. That he's like, yes, they won't allow my son to come to harm in the final battle. And it's addressed several times in the episode. Dax is bringing it up, like, you used to call them wormhole aliens and not like this whole emissary thing. And so we're really hanging a lantern on, like, look how far Cisco has come in this way, which from a Starfleet perspective is maybe not the way you want to go. I can see why other people are not comfortable with that. Like, you've become a religious figure and you've kind of bought into it, and it's a little weird, honestly. But I like that dynamic for the show, where it's just like, yeah, it's very Deep Space Nine, that it's like, oh, this is not something you would have seen on, like, The Next Generation. If some society made Picard a religious figure, he'd be like, no, we're not doing that.
Right.
So,
well, that exact thing happened. So.
Well, yeah, but it's like, it's a Deep Space Nine thing, and it's delving deeply again into, like, the Bajoran culture bit, which has been a through line for the whole series. So there's bits and pieces of this that I think are really good. The overall, like, execution, I'm not sure I felt was super strong. It's weird because there's not... I start to say there's no bad guy. You point out that Kai Wynn has reasonable motivations. She's not, like, a bad guy in the episode. There is a literal, like, evil demon thing, but it's hardly in the episode at all. The conflict through a lot of the episode isn't even so much like the Kai and Cisco. It's like Cisco versus the world, but really kind of versus, like, he knows that the prophets are wanting something from him, but he doesn't know what, and it's pissing him off.
Right.
Which is how we eventually come to, like, destroying. It comes to a head when he breaks the thing, because he's run out of time. He's run out of road to figure this out, and he's getting really upset about it. Which is kind of an interesting route to take, but also it's like, it's hard for me to get that invested in it when it's such a, like, ethereal, like, you can't put your finger on exactly what we're up against in this episode until it's turns into kind of a cartoon at the end. So I'm kind of middling on this episode. I think overall there's nothing that I'm going to call it like I really strongly dislike. It's just like there's a lot of meh, and then there's a few good bits. I'm going to put it just above the line at like a lieutenant commander.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, the conflict, other than just like the ultimate final showdown between good and evil that happens at the end, it's kind of just like, faith and having to push forward with your faith despite the fact that you can't convince other people, of what you're so sure is right or whatever. But I think this episode is a lot of fun, even though I don't know what it is. I don't know if it just like brings me back to my Power Rangers days or what's going on. Because this episode is fun, and I feel a really schlocky way, and seeing like Jake go evil mode and all that stuff. I don't know. It just kind of so big and ridiculous at the end that I'm like, okay, I'm along for this ride. Sure. And I didn't even notice, like, I watched it once, then I went back to skim through it to write my notes. And then, I didn't even notice when I was watching it that, like, the first part with the Kai and the, all the arguing about who should have the tablet and all that stuff, like, that's the majority of the episode. And it's by itself kind of, you'd think would be kind of boring, but I didn't even notice. Like, I don't know, it didn't bother me. We just we had this tablet mystery, and then suddenly like God and Satan are fighting on the promenade. So I don't know. It's not a Captain Caliber episode, even though I might have almost had a Captain level of fun watching it, but. I think I will pretty solidly give it a commander for not necessarily the I don't know, writing quality or just something about it is just kind of fun in a silly, I don't know. But even though like you say, like you mentioned, like some of the character stuff with Cisco is kind of like sloppy and doesn't kind of click. Like, he assures Jake like, well, I'm the emissary, but I'm also your father. And then it's like 15 minutes later, he's like, yeah, prophets, take my son or whatever. So, and then hearing about kind of how these script changes happened, it kind of makes sense. But
yeah. I mean, it sounds like they had some major changes in there, and so a little bit of that I could see how that would get lost. And it's like if swapping in Jake is kind of a last minute thing, like you could see how like they're trying to build up Kai Wynn through the episode as an adversary, and then you make her the adversary in the end. Like it's it's like a progression that you can see, and then when they're like, oh no, it'll be an Abraham thing, let's put Jake in there,
right?
They're like, oh crap, we need to like build in some lead up to this too, and so it's a little clunky.
Yeah. And then I'm not 100% sure exactly what Wynn's motivations are, other than, I mean, she said there'd be no need for like Kais and emissaries when the Golden Age starts, so maybe she's afraid of losing her important position or something.
I mean, she's put a lot of work and murders and things into getting that position, so yeah, she didn't want to give that up. And maybe Kira's right, and it really is just about like she sees this person with so much faith that they're willing to risk their own son and she's supposed to be the spiritual leader, and she does not have that level of faith, and so like she's pissed about it.
I think it's also worth saying it's always great to see Louise Fletcher.
Oh yeah,
you're always going to have a fun time when she shows up. So. I mean, interesting episode. You definitely don't see an episode like this every week. So.
Nope. Wait, the ultimate battle between good and evil? How often can they do that?
Yeah, and I just love that it's just like, oh, that's happening now. Okay.
Yeah, just FYI.
It's like it's not going to happen in like the season finale. It's just Beelzebub and the Almighty have showed up for their apocalyptic fight. All right.
We'll see how that goes.
The prophets will live as one with the people, we will say in one throwaway line.
I just realized I was looking through the credits because it mentions in the notes that Louise Fletcher is not credited as special guest star, which is how she's typically credited. So she gets a different credit in this episode. So I went down to look at who's credited in this episode. And there's, all the people you'd expect to be credited, more or less. Normal cast members plus our special cast members. And then there's some uncredited people who, Morn is always in there, random Bajoran background officers. One of the uncredited, unknown, and then there's unknown performers where it's like, here's some actors, or here's some characters, we have no idea who played them. One of them is Bajoran Ranjan. Huh. And I was like, wait, you're not telling me that guy who had like a bunch of lines and stuff, we don't know who he was. But no, it's actually the guy who tells Cisco, like, hey, services are about to start, and gives him, like, an eye when he starts talking to Kai Wynn. Apparently he's not credited for the episode, and we don't even know who it was.
That's weird.
Yeah.
What a mystery.
Random digression. Let's title review. What do you think of The Reckoning?
I mean, The Reckoning happened.
Yep.
And I mean, The Reckoning is it's a little bit of a generic name, but for that thing, but
yeah,
it's not like The Twilight of the Gods or something like that. But I mean, the title promised a reckoning, and the reckoning happened in the episode. So at least as far as relevance, you got to give it credit for that.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Other than that, like it's not clever, but I don't really need them to be clever in this situation. If you're gonna have an episode called The Reckoning and you do a reckoning, so what's our other one? Memorability. That might be a little bit of a problem, but because it is a little generic. But
it's a little generic. There's probably multiple episodes, especially I think as we move into season 7, that you could look at and think that could be The Reckoning, but I feel like it's fairly memorable in that there is a capital R. There's a thing that happens in the episode called The Reckoning that they mention several times. So if you can remember that much about the episode, I feel like the title, it's fairly memorable.
I mean, I have to give them credit. Like, they didn't do something weird. They were just like, I don't know, what's this one called? The Reckoning? Oh, okay. Makes sense. So I can get behind it.
Sure.
But other than that, you have any final thoughts?
Nope.
But yeah, that's our discussion of The Reckoning. Thanks for listening. If you like that one, maybe you'll like our discussion of The Assignment.
Yeah, there you go.
We talked about
a Paw Wraith dual episode thing.
Do a little Paw Wraith watch marathon.
Yeah.
You can find that wherever you're listening to this. Future episodes too, maybe, if you look at the date on the thing you're listening to and it's way in the past of the date that you exist in right now. If you want to leave us a comment, you can do that on YouTube. But my name is Fletcher. About to say goodbye is Data.
Bye.
We look forward to seeing you next week. But remember, I didn't come up with a but remember thing, but
but The Reckoning, I don't know.
Right. The prophets and the people will live as one. And that's a good thing.
And that may or may not be a good thing, honestly. I was like, they think they go to the Celestial Temple after they die or something, right? Does that mean they all going to die? Or
oh yeah. To me, it had vibes of ancient Cthulhu will awaken and reclaim his throne or something.
But remember, go to Quarks. It's happy hour.
Oh yeah. Every hour is happy hour at Quarks.
Yeah, there you go.